that we live in, we see just the mega gurus, right? But how does the hyperlocal guru function?
I noticed that everyone, as you said, or someone in the family is following a guru. And it can be those huge gurus, celeb on the TV, which of course should be a subject for Netflix, show, because we want to peep into their life. It doesn't matter if they do something good. I was more interested to see what happens in the poor neighborhoods of Delhi. How this, religious bhakti, guru-bhakti tradition is taking form inside local communities, mostly of migrants to the city.
Tell me, in your research, when you were researching both the mega gurus and the small gurus, let's talk about their origin story. How did they come to be a guru, and how did they begin to amass a following?
We live in a hyper-capitalist, or if you want, neoliberal society. The ideal is that you need to get a fortune, you need to get capital, you need to be independent, you need to be self-earning, you need to be successful, all of that. Local communities, they really adapted the idea of self-made man or woman in a sense that the guru will preach that kalyāṇ, which is well-being, can be achieved through effort, regardless of your caste, gender, and karma. It's a self-effort achieved goal, but it's not a capitalist goal, because the definition of well-being is your ability to provide for others. But sometimes also we are in the bazaar, we are in a capitalist world. People drop out of gurus. No one today is giving their soul. People constantly change gurus, drop gurus. This one doesn't work, we go to this one.
Is there an app for gurus? Like
I would
choose
like to
your
know that.
choose your
Choose
most
your
valid guru or
It's
something
not
like that?
far from that.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Don't Run Into Glass, a podcast hosted by thecitizen.in. I'm Gethi.
And I'm Anika.
And Anika, what are we chatting about today?
Today we are chatting about gurus in India. It's a hot topic, especially when we look at the immense following and the passionate masses who believe in this sort of phenomenon that's taken over India. And not only India, it's been our greatest import. Remember that show that we used to watch on Osho?
Yes, I was fascinated, honestly, yes.
Yeah. So, long time ago when I used to work at OP Jindal University, when I used to teach there, I met this amazing professor who was writing her dissertation on the landscape of gurus in India. Mega gurus, but also like smaller gurus on the fringes of mega cities and stuff like that. And I have always been interested in this topic because we living in a city like Delhi, we know so many people who are so devoted to some of them. And at the same time, when I was growing up in my village, I noticed that there was a lady over there who was like a spiritual go-to person in the village.
Like a localized guru.
Like she wasn't really a guru, but she was this person who when I was a child, I was told these stories that, she used to get possessed and she used to dance around in a certain way. And, all the ladies of the village then started going to her to ask her questions about, their personal life and how she could help them sort out if she had visions, that could be helpful to them and such. So I've just been very interested in this. And obviously I've indulged a little bit in this by studying and reading.
We know you have. Not just by studying and reading, but maybe even by like your curiosity leading you elsewhere.
Yeah.
And before we introduce our guests, I think I would like to just admit that I'm very out of my depth in this like conversation because as you know, I've never really followed a guru or had anyone in my family follow a guru or even, I really, it's something that I've struggled to even understand why people do. And yet I'm very conscious of the fact that like we live in a country where a familiarity or a curiosity of the occult or the mystic forms of what's around us are maybe more important than what we consider scientific, or they go hand in hand, perhaps, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important admission to make going into this conversation. So if I do come across a little skeptical, please just nudge me and tell me to shut up.
That's all right, because I also have a certain degree of skepticism over here, because when I used to study classical Indian religion, I mostly studied about traditional spiritual masters like Abhinavagupta, Shankaracharya and stuff like that. And then within these realms, how to become a guru in that way was such a, you know, it was a path that one had to take for the rest of their life.
Mhm.
But and they weren't really god people,
Yeah.
but here we're talking to someone about gurus who are self-proclaimed god
God,
men and
yeah,
women.
absolutely.
That's a very different
Yeah.
landscape as well. And yes, it dabbles with the occult, and yes, it dabbles with magic making and
Which is
all of
so
that.
intrinsic to our society, right? Like, I think that's like a very important point and context to set.
I think it was one of the greatest exports of India, even from the very ancient period when Indian traditional systems were being adopted in Southeast Asia, East Asia, the Near East, West Asia. India was looked upon as this land where maybe these spiritual masters were like magicians almost, and people from far and wide were coming into India to actually meet these spiritual masters. Whether or not they were magicians is besides the topic, but as the whispers floated around, it translated in that way. But in contemporary India, how it has translated and how it has become an economic force
Yep.
is what I'm most curious about. So would you like to introduce our guest?
No, I think you should definitely introduce our guest because the two of you have worked together, right?
Yeah.
Is that
Hi,
it?
Michal.
Yes.
So, I know we work together in Opijandal and you continue to work there right now. But why don't you give us an introduction, not only about what you do right now, but also this dissertation that you wrote and which has brought us together yet again?
So, first of all, to put, as you said very wisely, to put this guru thing into one category and think we can say guru and speak about a huge phenomena that, it's a Sanskrit words, right? The word guru has Sanskrit root. It means heavy. And it's still relevant for today. So, or they are heavy with knowledge, right? And merit. They can also be heavy with influence on society, on politics, right? So they are heavy in that sense. They can be heavy with money.
Yes.
So they can be heavy in that sense.
That's a common point we're noticing these days. That the contemporary era gurus are quite heavy with money. I remember Osho had like 10, 15 Rolls Royce Phantoms
Yeah.
that he
and
used
the
to drive
airplanes,
around.
right? Like he had private airplanes.
So they can be heavy in that sense. So it's very so and. The other meaning is the one that, takes away the darkness, bring light to the darkness, so they can really have knowledge that enlightens everyone. So it's very hard to put it in one category. And then it can be a guru who teaches Sanskrit for, young children. It can be a guru of dance. It can be a guru of a sampadhyaya, some kind of a tradition that goes from generations. It can be a self-claimed guru. So it can be just a new age guru, American, or, so the word is English today. It's an English word.
Mm-hmm.
It's so common and it's such a huge phenomena.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to even talk about it as a one thing. And I did ethnography. Like you, I'm trained, I think there is this, I'm sure like when I started studying India 20 years ago, there was definitely hierarchy between what you should study. You should study very colonial idea of what India should be, how it should be studied, like through Sanskrit and all those texts. So I also started like that. And then I fell in love with India of the everyday. So I moved to Hindi and more, spoken language, and I started ethnography. And, I'm coming from a very poor neighborhood in Israel. I'm Israeli.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm coming from a quite poor neighborhood in the peripheries of the big cities.
Mm-hmm.
And I always saw, this all kind of organization, local organization from outside, then later religious organization activated in those neighborhoods. And I think when I came to live in Delhi after my master, I married an Indian. I have two Rajasthani girls at home. So after I came here, suddenly I understood that I'm not stepping into the peripheries of Delhi, that Delhi has this line that you cannot cross, these unseen borders. Mm-hmm. And I got really curious to cross them. That was one. And the second thing was that I noticed that everyone, as you said, or someone in the family is following a guru. And it can be those huge gurus, celeb on the TV. which of course should be a subject for Netflix, show, because we want to peep into their life. It doesn't matter if they do something good.
Sure. Yes. There's a form of like curiosity, like what's happening. Yeah.
Like
absolutely.
any celeb, like you want to look what's going on in Shah Rukh Khan's home. You want to see it, right? So it's the same.
Yes.
But some of them are very local that I don't know or heard about. So because so many was written about the big ones, what we call Maha gurus, which is also a very modern phenomena. Okay, I was more interested to see what happens in the poor neighborhoods of Delhi. How this, religious bhakti, guru-bhakti tradition is taking form inside local communities, mostly of migrants to the city. And this is how this journey started.
Right.
Very interesting. And I mean, before we get into some of the specifics of what your research has pointed towards, can you give us a little bit of an idea of what this world of the hyperlocal guru looks like? Because again, I think I was always, I mean, if you asked me whether I was aware that there were like gurus at a very local level, known just to maybe their neighborhood, I would have said probably, but it's not something that I've thought about because because of the bubble that we live in, we see just the mega gurus, right? Like we know people who follow them, we've heard of them, we see them on TV. But how does the hyper-local guru function? And what is, just give us a little bit of insight on what's happening there.
So first of all, it's very different, okay? And it has socioeconomical aspect to it. So if you're a middle class, you will go to the big gurus because this is your space, your habitat. It's like your natural space to go to. You're dressed in a certain way. You have the capital to approach them. In those very small, and usually when people go to big gurus, even if they have a crisis in life, they're going to search always. The vocabulary will be meaning, sense of the word, right? They don't need to be saved because they don't have food on their table.
Yeah.
In the local communities, in the hyper-local communities, it's usually, many of them are established by women. There is a gender aspect to it. There are also men, but there are many women gurus. And then most of the followers are female.
How interesting.
Because, and there is also sociology, context to it. Because many of these women are migrants. They came from Himachal, Punjab, Haryana, Bihar, wherever, UP. They're coming usually because the husband is in the search for work. But all their life, which was usually before it was in the context of their family and community and maybe village, like Anika just said, suddenly they're dependent on the husband. If the husband collapses into alcohol, into gambling, which is very common, everything collapses. So they're suddenly in existential mood. And where they're in existential mood, it's about food. It's about the husband stealing stuff and selling them. It's about, getting the kid into school. It's about maybe for her first time in her life, getting a job. It's existential. And then someone is telling her, 2 streets from here, there is this woman and she might help you. And then they go. And first of all, they get first aid. They get immediate help. This is a very different way of approaching a guru than the big ones. And it's a very different context.
Do you think like this kind of urge to find help is like India's version of seeking therapy in the most local landscape?
It can be therapy, but in those setups, when I'm speaking, I would say that the bigger gurus are more into what you're saying, okay? That someone is searching for a meaning, for explanation to what things are happening. Let's say you're a middle class in Delhi and a series of bad things happen to your business or a series of bad things happen to your family health. And now you need to figure it out because, this is more existential from a psychological point of view. And then you need meaning. And then you will approach a guru that will give you the meaning. But here I'm talking about everyday survival. Yes, they will help them also in the psychological aspect of it. And of course, all of these phenomena has capitalist and religion, mixed into it. So many times those very local gurus are also in a way providing a help, but also transforming local economies, which is also interesting because they're...
like in what way? Could you give us an example?
Yes, I will explain. For example, let's look at the idea... I'm saying that the religious idea is changing the economical idea, and the economical idea is changed by religion. So it's like it's It's both ways. So, for example, we live in a hyper-capitalist, or if you want, neoliberal society. The ideal is that you need to get a fortune, you need to get capital, you need to be independent, you need to be self-earning, you need to be successful, all of that. But in Indian, basic tradition, you're born into caste, which determines a lot. You're born into gender, which determines a lot. Then you have the idea of karma, whatever you did back then, that is determining a lot, right? So there is all of that. So we see that in local communities, they really adapted the idea of self-made man or woman in a sense that the guru will preach that kalyāṇ, which is well-being, can be achieved through effort, regardless of your caste, gender, and karma. It's a self-effort achieved goal, but it's not a capitalist goal. So now we are, undermining the capitalist system because the definition of well-being is your ability to provide for others. Something. Maybe you're just doing a small seva, right? The word seva will come again and again in many contexts. Service, selfless service. But the idea is that those who have nothing cannot give anything. You first need to stand on your feet. If you came first for the guru because your husband is drunk and you need a job and you got a job, and now your kids are going to school, maybe you will come to do the prasad in the temple, to cook in the temple on Sunday. Suddenly you have a free time, little bit, because you can breathe a bit, right? And then you can give a little bit. So the idea also of how the economic of the societies function is different from the capitalist idea.
Very interesting. This word kalyāṇ that you have used, and I know it loosely translates to well-being. And I was reading your paper on kalyāṇ itself, and it's a word I've never really come across. Again, that might be my ignorance speaking. But you very rightly pointed out that it's very crucially linked to how the relationship with the guru works, or even like what people in Indian society might aspire towards. Can you explain the concept of kalyāṇ in like a little more detail?
So first of all, you have come across kalyāṇ. You have two ministers in India under the name kalyāṇ.
That's true,
right?
Yeah,
So you have two ministers.
Yes.
You have a street of the prime minister who was changed to John Kalyan something. I don't remember exactly what, but the street was changed to Kalyan. Narendra Modi constantly translates the importance of yoga is to achieve Kalyan to the world. Like the word Kalyan is constant in the conversation. I came across the word during my fieldwork. Everyone was talking Kalyan. That was the language. And I was really wondering where this word came from. So it has also Sanskrit origins. It's an adjective in Sanskrit. It's not a noun. It's to describe something which is very, very auspicious. So, for example, in the Ramayana, Ram is described as the true Kalyan, or in the Vedas, Indra. Indra or Agni, I don't remember. But it comes as an adjective to something. It's not a noun. And in Hindi, it becomes a noun.
Okay.
And I was wondering about it. And one day I was asking someone in Hindi, Kalyan kaise milte hai? How can you get Kalyan? It's like, gara hai, bahut hai Kalyan, come home, there is so much Kalyan. I'm like, huh? How? What was? So I went to his home, and he had a shrine, and there was lots of Kalyan in the shrine. It was in the shape of the Kalyan a magazine of the Gita Press, stocked in piles in his home. And then I started reading into those. And then I saw that really around this time, the word Kalyan emerged, a very Hindu context. And it came as a new vocabulary for the aims of lives of the Hindus. So before we have the Purushartha, the 4 aims of life, India always had a very broad idea of well-being. So the 4 Purusharthas includes from kama, which is sexual pleasure and achievement, to artha, which is material wealth, to dharma, which is the right conduct and morality, and moksha, which is liberation. And suddenly you have a new concept in the beginning of the 20th century, which has all of them inside, but unlike the charpal, the 4 fruits of life, as it comes in the Hanuman Chalisa, it is not bound, very close to what I said before, to gender, caste, and karma. Anyone can achieve Kalyan. While the 4 aims of life are very historically, philosophically connected to caste and gender, who can achieve what and when,
But Kalyan isn't.
Kalyan isn't, which was very good for a new nation rising and
Yes.
searching for a concept to hold all for everyone and to hold everything together. So
How
it's very
interesting.
holistic.
Yeah. And I think that's something that's very interesting because we do realize that there is this sort of structure to Indian society that's hard to escape. And then like this narrative of Kalyan that's coming across is something that you achieve through effort and through being able to stand on your own 2 feet.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite
And it's the common point between what most of the spiritual gurus or just gurus in general, whether it's the big gurus or the small gurus or the local gurus, are sort of professing to their followers. And each of them have a way of convincing them how that Kalyan needs to be done. So, which brings me to my next question. Tell me, in your research, when you were researching both the mega gurus and the small gurus, let's talk about their origin story. How did they come to be a guru and how did they begin to amass a following? Is there a common point, much like how they have secured devotion through Kalyan? Did they use it right at the onset, or what is the overall origin story of
how do you
most of
become a
these?
guru?
How did they all become a guru and really get that kind of social capital that they have right now?
I don't have a manual. If you want a manual to become one,
No,
Anika does.
not a manual.
100%.
But I do
Anika's
want to
secret
know.
desire.
I do want to know, what did you find out?
okay. So first of all, as I said, it's a modern phenomena. I think we can point at Swami Narayan, colonial period, as a starting point for this journey. Because, we had gurus before, but this mass movement of million going after one person, worshipping him or her as the divine alive, is a modern phenomena. And it starts in the colonial period. And then you see Swami Narayan, you see Ramakrishna, you see Ramana Maharishi a bit later, you see Aurobindo and Mira Alfassa. So you start seeing those, Sai Baba, of
Yeah.
course, right? All of them 19th century gurus, beginning of 20, having tons of followers around them. All of them were hard practitioners. All of them really, some of them were initiated, some of them were not initiated. Ananda Maima, the first female Mahaguru in Bengal, the first female guru who was not married to anyone, who on her own, she initiated herself because she's a woman. Who will initiate her to guruhood? So
Exactly.
in a full moon night, she was both guru, disciple, and the divine doing her initiation into guruhood. So yes, in a sense, many of them are self-claimed, but we should not look badly on it, and I will explain to you why. Because when you have successors are always male-dominated, caste-dominated. The door is not open. So yes, you can admire the effort and they were born into and the results of wisdom and gyan, of course, but it's not democratized. What happens in the idea of the avatar guru, I mean, that someone is claiming that he is, or he has a specific connection or union, or he is the thing, like Swami Narayan is not Narayan. He is Vishnu in a human form. This is new. And then it is self-claimed in a sense because you're opening a completely different game. Like we are entering a different board game. And then you definitely need charisma because who will believe you if you don't have charisma? Charisma is needed. What you do with it, it's a completely different question. But you definitely need to deliver. You showed me this video of Radhema. And she's saying there very clearly, you have to deliver. They deliver something. Now, power everywhere in the world, and I want to be very clear, it doesn't matter if it's a political power, if it's a religious power, you can use it for the good, you can use it for the bad. It's always the story. But you do need to deliver something. In the 19th century, we see people, even Gandhi, that do a very hard religious path of self-exploring. Ramakrishna, he's doing bhakti, tantra. He's even doing a bit Christianity, Sufism. He's an explorer. You have Sai Baba, who is saying, I'm not a Hindu, I'm not a Muslim. They're all social reformers, and they're all religious reformers. And it's important because you see that it comes together. And because they are reformers, they have to create something out of a new. Now, but your question, how can someone just claim to be what it has very deep and normal idea in the Indian thought. If you think about Tattvam Asi, you are that Vetaketu. Udala Karuni is saying 2,500 years ago to his son in the Vedas, you are that. You are God. What did he say? You are Brahman. You are the thing. And one of India's most important teaching is that everything is one. You see the diversity. We are sitting here, 3 women, but we are all one Shakti, or we are the one Brahman, or we are the one. And the tree. How do you claim a tree to be sacred? It is sacred. That's the point, because everything is one. You just need to expose, right? So if I can expose my divinity, I can claim.
Just need to unravel the
Yes.
macrocosm and the micro. So Brahman is, just to decode it a little bit, because
please,
it
for me
became
as
very
well. Yeah.
philological.
Yeah.
It became very
Sorry.
theological. The universe is essentially, okay, let me put it another way. If we've seen Men in Black, okay,
Oh God,
the
I
last
can't-
scene of Men in Black was a picture of the universe zoomed down to the collar of the pug dog that was there,
Yeah.
where he held a little medallion which looked like the Milky Way in his medallion. And pretty much that is what it is. The universe is subsumed into us. The macrocosm is within us, and we are the microcosm of that macrocosm. We are mirror images. However, what needs to be excavated out of us can be excavated, and then we will reveal what we may. So divinity is something that can be revealed.
Yeah.
you
Which
know?
is, I guess, then the I mean, how this happens, right? Because for me, that would be a question mark. Like, how can someone just claim that they're divine? But now that gives me some insight into that.
Yes,
phenomenon.
because I think they also, I guess what I also drew out of the answer that you gave for my question is that what these people did was kind of reveal their divinity, number
Mhm.
one, and then explain to people how they have come to this path of finding their truth and sharing their truth, and now they are, from a religious standpoint, doing the work for the people, and thus have become almost social
But I have a
workers.
question, right? So you said, and this is what Radhima said in that documentary, the little bit that we watched, that you have to deliver. Nobody's just going to come and give you donations if you're not delivering, right? I want to understand, what does that mean? Because a lot of the gurus, they claim that they're going to solve your health concerns. They're going to sort of like make sure you have financial well-being. Which, to the skeptic in me, and I'm approaching this conversation as the skeptic in me, that's like my only authentic role over here, seems like, well, they can't really deliver that. So what are the things that they are able to deliver on that actually gives them a mass following, and maybe this illusion of being able to deliver even on like curing cancer, or I don't know, how does this all pan out?
Let me first answer with the small gurus, because the hyperlocal gurus, I think because it's easier for me.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's something I did deep ethnography into. And in the small gurus, what happens is that the guru creates some kind of agency. Now, how she created this agency? She created. So, for example, one of the gurus I've studied, she already left her body in '99, but she was the one who created the community, and I gathered lots of materials about her. She was a migrant from Pakistan in the partition. She was 13. She was married by 14. She got pregnant immediately after, got into deep depression apparently, was not functioning. They took her to Vaishno Devi for a healing in Katra, to the goddess. And there was a union between them. So she got into these vibrations that Annika described, and people were thinking like she's acting out, what is going on with her? And she was there for, some days, some time, and then she goes back to Delhi. And slowly, she's getting more and more pregnant. She had many kids, but slowly she's also doing religious work. And some union was created between her, Jordan, like really union was created between her and the divine. And slowly she's creating more unions with devotees, union with places, union with temples. So I always felt that, and this description is very similar also in Chhatarpur extension, where I worked with a female guru, migrants from Himachal, who also is the founder of her community.
Okay.
So those are women not born to be gurus. They were married against their will into families that they didn't really went along with. They didn't have the agency to become a head of a community, but they did expand their self. It's an expansion of the self. And there is something in guruhood in general, not only in the local one, which is about expanding yourself. How do you expand yourself? You create those associations, those connections to the divine, to divine places, to devotees, and you become a center of these connections which surrounds you. Just that gives you a lot of agency, social agency and divine agency. Now, obviously, from a religious perspective, I cannot testify for the divine. If people, for me, from my perspective, if someone is claiming that he received something, he received it. Yes, they also give darshans, private talks with the devotees on, as you know, like as we said, this more psychological aspects. So they sit and they talk, they see them. Suddenly someone sees you in this world. They see them, they give spiritual talk, they do rituals, they do the celebrations of festivals, but they also help you find a job, a lawyer if you need it. If your son was murdered, if your daughter was murdered, things that happens. You got your daughter married and she was murdered, but you are nobody. How do you handle it? The guru is handling it. It's a female guru, but she has connections in the police with lawyers. If you have sickness, she has connections in the hospital. So this is agency. So this, creating all of this association. Now think about a big guru. How much this is just the local one. But think about the big one. How much agency from this association, this crazy ability to expand yourself, of the question of who you are. Are you just you? Are you also the divine? Are you also a network of political connections? So if you can expand it, you immediately expand your agency. What is agency? For those who are, this word is big. Agency is your ability to impact the world.
Yeah.
How
Yeah,
you can.
that answers it.
Recently I went to Bangalore and I went to the Sri Sai Baba Gram, and I saw the infrastructure there, which is phenomenal. They had this huge estate over, I mean, believe me, Getty, it was over 100 acres. They had 2 hospitals with 700 beds. I saw the list of doctors that were coming from all over India, forget all over India, all over the world. And all the treatment was absolutely for free.
Free.
They had no payment counter. And let me tell you, when I entered that hospital, it was fancier than one of our 5-star hotels in Delhi, right? Other than that, the medical college, the arts college, the Vedic college, the Gaushala, they have horse stables. They are building an elephant stables. They have a girls' college where actually I went to give a lecture to the students about archaeology. I was extremely impressed about the degree and the vastness of social impact they are having. And they deliberately set up these large establishments in very, very rural and far flung areas and provide the best of facilities. So I completely take your point about that. And I was absolutely enamored and so thankful for the work that they were doing for the common people. I want to also talk about, some of these mega gurus and these local gurus in terms of, like, when we were watching this Radhima interview, there was a rationalist who had come and he was, questioning the odds of things actually happening. Like Radhima saying, chamatkar ko namaskar hai, right? That people bow down to the miracles happening. I perform miracles. I'm a miracle woman. Fair enough, I'll take your word for it. But then when this rationalist says something, it also made sense. And this is where my question is placed for you. Like, what did you find out in your research? Most often, things come true, but many times things also don't come true. There's a 60-40 chance, and a lot of advice that is given to people also, because a lot of it is like people coming in like, oh, I am childless, I want to have a child. So they'll say, they'll give you a upay, and upay means a solution, right? And they'll give you that solution, and probably a doctor will also give you a general solution like that, and you'll keep trying. Most often when it doesn't happen, then sometimes these gurus blame you and they say that you are not doing it correctly. And this is what this rationalist was saying, the ratio and the chances, it's like a game that is played, and then the blame comes on the person also, and then the person is deeply affected by it. Tell me, when you were researching all of these people, how true is all of this, and how does this play into that social psychology of the followers?
I will answer that, but I will first answer what you described at Satya Sai Baba, and then I will get into that. So first of all, also in Radhama, we had a discussion before we met, and there was always this issue of this grand money. How is it okay that those gurus are really accumulating so much wealth? Because for Satya Sai Baba to create everything you described, he needs the organization is not with us, but they need a lot of wealth. And I think she got right into the point, Radhama, and I will tell you why. Because, and this is also the tension between small gurus and big gurus. If you are avatar, let's say that this guru is an avatar. He needs capital to build hospitals. He needs money to do all of that, to really give Kalyan to the world in a massive way. He needs a lot of money. If he is a true avatar, he will have followers, because true God has followers. And if they have followers, the followers give money. So in a very weird logic, if a guru gains lots of money, he is the true thing. Because if he's not, then he's a failed guru. Maybe he's fake. Maybe he's not an avatar. So part of this lavish look is a say to the world that I am. But where is the exactly line between fake and true? Mostly it falls on Seva. He needs to take now this huge capital and spend all of it to the well-being of the world. And if he doesn't, then many times this guru will be point as a nakli, as someone who is fake. So this is the logic of money usually. Now to your question about chamatkar. This is a really hard question. And I have been through 2 years of fertility. I couldn't, get pregnant with my second child, and we went to this long journey, fertility journey. And the doctor, they were acting just like gurus. Try this, try that. And every time it failed, how do you think I felt I'm doing something wrong. I am doing something wrong, because they're doctors. If they prescribe something, they know what they are doing. They have studied. If it doesn't, or something in my body is wrong, or something is my mind, right? Now we are all what you think is what happened. So maybe my mindset is not there enough, or maybe, something I'm doing wrong. So when you talked about it, when you said it like that, I said, I know the feeling, but I know it from doctors. And with gurus, yes, many times the logic is that the guru gives the right blessing, the right instructions, but then in the same logic that I described, your mind is not there, your soul is not there, something in you is not producing the right situation for the blessing to really give fruits. But sometimes also we are in the bazaar, we are in a capitalist world. People drop out of gurus. No one today is giving their soul. I promise you, no one. People constantly change gurus, drop gurus. This one doesn't work. We go to this
Is
one.
there an app for gurus?
I would like to know that.
choose your
Choose
most
your
valid guru or
It's
something
not
like that.
far from that. Everything
It
is
really
online.
feels like that.
But see,
right now.
that's what it is, right? Like, it's now the economics of it. And I think that again speaks to the skeptic in me. And I want to say two things. One is, of course, like the whole concept of like cognitive bias or selection bias, right? Like, I mean, here in India, we believe in gurus, but in the West, you believe in like Virgo and Leo and whatnot. And that is also just somebody telling you your characteristics, out of which 60% might apply to you, 40% don't apply, but your brain will focus on the 60% that applies. So I feel like that is a universal phenomenon with many, many things. But I feel like with gurus, like for me, where the skepticism comes in, I'm like, yes, you're talking about like, saving people, and there's this, sort of like emancipation of the soul and kalyāṇ and all of that. But there is also this very obvious like economics of it. Can we like, I know we've touched upon it, but can we maybe speak a little bit about how the business of it all works?
So again, in the hyperlocal scene, there is no business into it, because most of the gurus, female gurus, male gurus, they are almost the same socioeconomic status as their followers. And usually they deal with such a poor population that they are constantly on the giving end. And, whatever little they get, they need to see how they manage with that the community. So they are working hard. It doesn't mean that there are no knuckles there. I remember when I was searching where to do the field work, it wasn't like I just came into the periphery and like, okay, come do field. No, I saw many places and I knew that I want to work in a place where I feel that my heart opens there. I don't know why, I couldn't explain it. And I went to many places and I couldn't feel, it's like a discourse. When you get into this discourse, you get in front of the guru and you don't feel anything and you leave. And then, I went to another place and my heart did open up, but they were Bengalis and they were speaking too much Bengali and I don't follow Bengali. I had to leave. And then I found those places. One is mostly Punjabi migrants and the other one has lots of Himachalis. And, there was something happened. I'm not a believer. I'm not a religious person. I don't follow anyone.
But
I
there's
am
some
a
connect.
seeker maybe.
Yeah.
But I felt that something good and healthy is happening there. So the economy of those places is usually economy. I call it the fountain economy. The guru is in the center. He spreads whatever he can spread from all these, connections I described. Now there is the outer circle. So let's say there is a woman in distress. She comes to the other outer circle and she starts drinking from the fountain. So in the beginning, she's just a drinker. She needs to get more and more and more and more. But slowly she progresses into it. She gets through initiation maybe. She starting to come regularly. She becomes part of the community. Slowly she gets so much that her life is a bit settled. And then at some point, I could imagine how a person which his face was walking towards the fountain, suddenly they flip. And they're the one who looks out. And they're the one who starts give. They give by, just cooking food at the temple, sitting with disturbed women, maybe finding a job. Now she can find a job for another devotee. So suddenly they're the givers. And this is the moment they have Kalyan. This is the exact moment when their life has some kind of transformation. In the bigger gurus, of course, it's very different. Those are middle-class people. They have the money. They have the resources. Not all of them. Some gurus like Ram Rahim Insan that is sitting now in jail.
Yes.
Some of the
Who was
followers.
also released from jail during election time for political campaigning.
So definitely there are many who abuse power. They know that they can. And when we spoke.
Or more like power uses them. Right? Because they have so much social capital and so much influence.
Yes, it's both ways. But
Yeah.
I think that there is a concept in India of surrendering and surrendering the ego in front of the divine. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is explaining it to Arjuna, right? You need to do the action with your mindset of me. You need to leave your ego, to leave the thought of I am the doer, I am the force, I am the one behind my actions. You do, but you do it through surrender to me. So the idea of surrender is very deep in the Indian context, and it goes to guru. One of the first demands, Sudhir Kakar wrote a lot about it from a psychological perspective. It can be it's like a baby looking at his mother as the almighty, and he's saying, I am part of this almightiness. It can be a healthy process of healing. It can be completely abusive. Yeah. And when it's an abusive, then you start giving your money, your time, you start working in the field of this guru and then buying as a seva and then buying the tomatoes from this field. So it can become very abusive.
And I think that leads to my next question. And now there are a lot of gurus that we have reached a certain amount of success. Some of them are in jail. Then I remember the Beatles had a guru who was very popular in the West at some time. And then he was who was that guru? Does anyone remember? I don't know. I can't remember. But anyway, he was then discredited as a fake. I want to talk a little bit about the fall from the top. What happens? Why does that happen? Can we talk about some cases where like an Osho was suddenly...
And also a significant roster of criminal past that has entered this landscape. Like we have Asaram, who is in jail.
Yeah.
Where there is sexual misconduct at the highest level.
Yeah.
There is Ram Rahim, again, sexual misconduct, mismanagement of money. Well, he's also a rock star on the side. Side note, his song, I Am a Love Charger, was played in Jimmy Fallon.
Really?
One night as what the hell are we listening to,
Yeah.
But look at the influence there. And then you have several times, even with Radhema, certain allegations were posed upon her legitimacy. So while that economic force is sort of generated and showcase that degree of materiality in spirituality in India, traditionally the cessation of ego, the suppression of ego, the absolute giving up of material desires towards the guru landscape where most people are going for material desires, right? And those gurus are showcasing their legitimacy through their material wealth, and thus are becoming almost so power hungry, or whatever reason it may be, but convicts. And so let's
Yeah,
talk
but
about
they
some of
still have
those.
a following. Like in many cases, even behind bars, like you said, he had to be released from jail for political campaigning. The following is still there.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
I don't want to defend them, but
Yeah.
I want to give the context.
yes,
Obviously, whoever touch women in the wrong way is a criminal. Let's
Yeah.
put it on the table. Funds, I'm less. Everyone are missing. But what I'm saying is, I'm joking. What I'm saying is that two things. One, the divine can always cross. I'm talking about almost an Indic thought here in the level of philosophy and culture. The divine can always cross cultural, traditional boundaries because he is above them. I will give you an example: Krishna and the gopis. There is no misconduct there. In the Indic thought, there is no misconduct between Krishna and the gopis because it's the divine and it's in the bhakti mood. Or, for example, under the guru, all castes can eat together, whether untouchables or high castes, because same people might not eat or get their kids married outside the context of the house of the guru, but within the house of the guru, everything is sacred. So there is no problem for an untouchable and a Brahmin to sit and eat from the same plate. So the divine always cross religious, gender, culture, whatever boundaries or even norms like Krishna and the gopis. So when you're in a bhakti context, things that from a law and order perspective can look crazy, maybe within the cult, I'm not justifying it. It's very important. I'm just looking at the inside ethnography of it.
absolutely.
So from within inside, many cults, not only Indians, we can see it in the States, we can see it in other cults, but with inside the cults, things that from outside look completely not okay, can be abusive, but can be in the inside logic very much okay. And then the devotees who still live under the fold of these ideas can still look at him as a divine. Even if the society and the court put him behind jail, they might not see it from the perspective you're looking at it.
I just find it very, very psychologically interesting to know what happens that you become so separated from civil society, from simple morality of what is right and wrong, and still carry on to support someone who a court of law has proved after hard evidence that this person deserves to be extracted from civil society and be put in jail. And yet the following continues. Like, I wonder.
Again, I think he should be in jail. I'm not here to...
Yeah,
but I am here to define the devotee because, again, you're looking from your own drishti, from your own very specific point of view of who you are and where do you stand.
And I think that's why I said what I said, because for you and not me, it's black and white, right? Like, how can you, for any of us, probably it's black and white. Like, how can you support somebody who did something that our constitution or our criminal code considers wrong? They should be behind bars. But for people who are so submersed in that, like in that person's teachings, they're already believing like the right and wrong is not the same as your and my right and wrong. And that's why I use the word empathy, because it's not their fault for thinking like that. It's also the philosophy and like you said, maybe certain aspects of like Indic thought and tradition, which is different from you and I. I'm not, again, even I'm not justifying it or condoning it or anything of the sort, but I guess I get maybe where it's coming from, however sad it is.
Yeah.
I also think that it's important to remember that, we live in this hyper media world and we don't know what was there before. It's like the rock stars of the 90s, they all abused women probably. Or, in Bollywood, what happened before Me Too, like everything was there. But because everything is in the spotlight, we can see the fault of everyone. I'm working on this Indian saint project, which is looking at really saints of the 19th century in the art form. And we were talking when we were doing this group discussion about them. We were saying there was no one to, show, oh, look, Ramakrishna did that. Imagine Ramakrishna used to wear women clothes and practice his religiosity while taking a feminine form. Today it would not pass because someone will take a photo of him and put it on the Instagram and say this guy is probably, so it would not pass. So there is something in the past that didn't have this, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram age that can also keep those people upper. Today everything takes holy persons, whereas the Pope, or it doesn't matter who it is, it can be in Christian setup, in Jewish setup, but everything is so exposed to the eyes of everyone that it's hard even to see sanctity.
Yeah, and being exposed to the eyes of everyone also, a lot of people are now forming their judgment based on what they are seeing and how they're perceiving things, certainly. But it was interesting in the previous conversation, the first time you used the word cult. And I just want to dwell on that a little bit, right? Because in my understanding of this landscape, some people have a following who are devotees. Some people have established social orders where deep philosophies are being practiced as a way of life, and there is great amount of social service that is being done in terms of public infrastructure that is being built and repeated worldwide. And then there are cults where certainly people are coming and living in their premises and professing the religiosity or the spirituality or the cultic behavioral norms that they are establishing over there, wear certain clothes a certain way, eat a certain food, pray a certain way, meditate a certain way. All of that is fine, but there is a significant difference between a cult, from what we saw in Wild Wild Country of Osho, and a social system where anyone and everyone is welcome. Like, for example, in some situations where hospital networks and schools and universities are being set up, anyone is welcome there. But in cult, anyone is not welcome. So these are also existing in the landscape of these gurujis simultaneously. So tell us a little bit more about how that works.
First of all, I use the word cult in a very the word cult got very bad reputation, mainly because of cult in the US. Small, bizarre cult that things are happening. One man with 20 women, everything is bad and evil, and child disappears and children disappears and whatever. I use the word cult as to identify a set of people who are acting the same way, eating the same way, praying the same
A
way.
homogenized social order.
Exactly. Not in a bad sense, not necessarily in a bad sense. And I think that so for example, the hyperlocal guru, they're very open-ended. Anyone can come in, anyone can go out. People live very individual life, but they're connected to the community. So they have their own bank accounts. They're not, they're not the same household, let's call it. So they have their own life, and then they share something together within the community. In the bigger organizations, you always have levels. You have the outskirts people who are engaged to some point, and then it goes and it's tightened up around the guru until you have the sannyasis, or ever they're called differently in different setup, but those who are maybe not even getting married, who dedicated all their life to the guru, all their efforts, all their time, all their work. And usually they are more close to him and they are more devoted and they're more one mindset. They share the same mindset.
Yeah, I think cult is also like how we use the term is definitely influenced by the West.
Yeah.
In fact, like some of the skepticism that I approach the conversation with is also influenced by the West. That there is, and then I'm very thankful that you sort of relate this back to like Indic thought processes and maybe how where that has emerged from, because I think that's a very important context to keep in mind to approach this from a more neutral space.
Yeah. No, I also have I absolutely enjoy listening to the rationalist of India who also approach this from a place of skepticism, and their perspective I find very interesting. Then also looking at it from the perspective of South Asian atheists and South Asian agnostics who acknowledge the spirituality and the religious realm, but do not sort of pander or associate or link to any particular thing, and do not want to be part of it as well. Atheists who completely deny
Yeah.
that this is, they actually call it mumbo jumbo, right?
Yeah.
And certainly, but I do think that yes, cult has a very Western significance over here, but in India too, it has
Yeah.
been like within Hinduism as well. When the Vaishnavas were not agreeing with the Shaivas, each other called each other cults.
Yeah.
They're like, this is not for real. This is just a cult. We are for real.
There's that
And
great
then
scene in The White Lotus, like the new season, where the daughter.
No spoilers.
Okay, sorry. But it's about like how the word cult is used, in
yeah,
a
how the
very
word,
like,
anything that is not understood is also looked upon as a cult, and that I agree can be a little unfair. But I think one of the things that I do want to understand for the sake of our audience also is how this landscape, which is so helpful for so many people, right? Divinity is so personal to so many people. It is so important. Religion is so important to some people from a point of view of personal belief, from a point of view of how you lead your life, right? And I have absolute respect for something like that. But at the same time, in desperate times, when people just associate with something like this, sometimes they can be misled in their desperation.
Yeah.
It's like when you go to a doctor when you're in so much pain, you'll do anything, right? And some people become victims of
preying
cult-like.
on vulnerability,
Yeah.
like the should a guru, where are the ethics of that? Because you have that much power and you have like religious capital and social capital in one place. Where are the ethics of preying on someone's vulnerability?
And who is
First of all-
managing those ethics? Like, does the government tax them? Or are they all NGOs?
We've decided that you're like the
Yeah.
insight into anything to do with
First of
gurus.
all, I want to respond to some things that you have said, and I think that as a whole, I'm pro gurus, and I will explain this sentence as a whole. I think that part of my interest in my research was to see how they're doing good in the world, and of course, we live in a world that we want to peep. News are all done by bad. It's a combination of all the evilness in the world. This is news, the idea of news today, and I was sure that if so many people goes to gurus, something good is happening there. There cannot be only abuse. Something good. People are not that stupid. We have to give them credit. We have to give them agency. If so many people are going, something good is happening. This is one. Second is that why I love this institute so much, and it goes deep into India, because India and the Indic thought can do something that very less religion could achieve, which to really accept diversity. And I know it became a cliche, but the fact that someone can claim this is, I think it's you can look at this movement to the modern guru as a hyper result of it. Okay, because the idea is the paths can be many. You can be, as you said, you can be a Shaiva, you can be a Shakta, you can be a Vaishnava, you can be a Tantric, you can do Bhakti, you can do Advaita Vedanta. Like the roads that are endless. And they're all aiming to achieve some kind of a spiritual, soteriological, liberations. But the paths are many. And if the paths are many, then anyone who is doing a really intense journey with herself or himself, they can pave a path to others. Now, this is also a very, very important point for me personally. Now, I'm not talking as a scholar. If you ask me, but how will you say he's Nakli and he's genuine? Mm-hmm. And this is very personal observation. I believe that a true guru is someone that really paves a path for you to become divine. Now, if he paves a path for you to become extremely dependent, but if she or he can really pave for you a path to find your own divinity and to transform
your life.
And it doesn't matter what is the path. And in the hyperlocal, especially female gurus, what I have seen is that because they are so local, because they look like the neighbor, they don't look like Radhema. Okay? You would not even know, if she would not wear an orange robe, you would probably not even consider her as someone sacred. They really pave path, and they're telling the people, You can achieve what I have achieved. I have not achieved something which is extraordinary. You can do it, and they help people stand on their own feet financially and spirituality. And they don't want, there is always the metaphor in Bhakti between kitten and baby monkey. So is a devotee is a kitten. Why kitten? Because the kitten, they're hanging the baby monkeys, they're hanging on their mothers to survive, and the kitten walk
On its own, yeah.
behind them. So is it that or that? So I think that a guru that really teaches you to follow, but not only to be a baby kitten forever. This is even not enough. Not to hang like a baby monkey, but also not to linger for the rest of your life as a baby. But as a good nurturing mother, like you would like, to do with your kids, to show them the path and tell them, but you will also be in my stand at some point. You can do that.
Yes.
I feel like personally, those are genuine gurus.
And how many of those genuine gurus are there?
Many.
Many?
I will say even more than we imagine, because again, to the news, we get the extreme stories.
Yeah.
News capture what Netflix can sell to people is the crazy stories of Oshu cult, and those crazy Ram Raim in science singing.
But I really liked something that you said, which is probably what I'm going to take away from this conversation, which was honestly probably going to even impact how I view people who follow gurus. Because so far it has been with a little bit of judgment, being like, okay, what are you doing? This is mumbo jumbo. But agency. And I think that's a really important word here, because why are people, I mean, you're right, people are not stupid. Why are people seeking out gurus? Obviously, they're benefiting from the relationship in some way. And I think it is a really pedantic situation to be where I can sit here and I, take this judgmental stand on, okay, this is mumbo jumbo. Why are you believing in it? I'm discounting that person's agency. And I think you've really held a mirror to my face in making me realize that. And it's reassuring to know that there is good that's happening through this guru relationship and the smaller, maybe even the more hyperlocal communities, because people do need a sense of like community, belief, even just a hand to hold them through life.
Especially in areas where the smaller gurus function, and like she said, those smaller gurus are not within the usual patterns that we see on television, and how gender also plays an important role, like where most of the devotees are women, and with meandering husbands, they come to seek help and really get that sense of
Yeah.
agency as well. So yeah, I think that's a great point that you brought up,
I
Gati, yeah.
remember it's a great point. It's actually a deep point because,
Yeah.
I was also sitting, I remember a moment. So one of the communities I worked with, they organized this small, it's called the Shri Rajmata Mandir in Shahadra, and they organized this small eye checkup and surgery. So if someone needed surgery later, they can manage that also. And there was this old woman, Simran. She was sitting there. She hardly sees herself. But she was managing the line, like she was making sure that no one will overstep anyone. And she was writing, I was helping her to write the numbers, and she was giving numbers and, telling people where to stand and what to do. And then she told me, I also need the eye surgery, but I will go in the end. I will do my 7, and then I will go. And then I told her, there is just here an NGO that you can go and it will do the same thing. She said, I would never go there.
Yeah.
And then, why we don't go? I said, I cannot speak there. They don't understand me. I don't know. They ask me in English. I have no answer, but this is my home.
Yeah.
This is where my Kalyan here. And here, I decide who go first in the line. I make sure that everyone not overstep. I trust my guru. I also have the blessing of this place. From here, I will do the surgery. But to the NGO, I will not walk.
Not go. Yeah.
So you could feel her agency. She's someone in this place. She's not just this needy person who goes for charity.
Yeah. How interesting. That's again like, yeah, just such a perspective shift. And even Radhima, I mean, all said and done, like I don't know what her origin story is, but like you said, she's living in a 4-storied mansion now in
Mumbai.
Mumbai. And I mean, at that the contradiction of that, of course, strikes me very often, where you're talking about transcending ego and materialistic objectives, but then you're sitting, I think Anika, you had this question, you're sitting on a golden throne and like
Yeah, like a palanquin, and people are throwing money at you, and you have these people who are coming to you with material questions and such. It's difficult to actually come to your own conclusions when you see all of this from the outside. Because with Radhima in that little documentary that we were watching, one of her bigger followers was an Oxford graduate who was going to her and had become he came from a place of skepticism as well, but then he transformed, which is very interesting for me to see. Not that I know enough about her, and I'm still curious about her, but about some others I'm not
But
so
Annika,
curious.
if you will just take the same descriptions you gave me and you will speak about the chariots of the gods in the Himalaya, they will just look the same. Like aesthetically, and you're the most person to think about aesthetic. If you just look from a devotion point of view, gods are putting on thrones. Thrones are Gadi is part of the god seat. They are in a way associated with in Himalaya, for example, and Punjab, they're kings.
Yeah, the opulence of
Right?
the heavens, right? That's what everyone aspires to. That's why everyone also aspires to go to heaven. It's not the austerity and the peacefulness, but it's the opulence of the heavens, right?
And I
So,
guess it's what you said, like the one of the mantras of the gurus is, if I can achieve this, so can you. And if your guru is, especially if you're like catering to a certain segment of society and you're sitting on a golden throne and showing that this is what you have been able to achieve through your divinity, then that would maybe speak to somebody who's looking to like follow the path of divinity.
Again, I don't know what's going on with Radhima,
Radhima.
but it's it's even when you go to a psychologist, if he creates a dependency, an unhealthy relationship, it's abusive.
Yeah,
Right? And psychologists, we know that there are abusive psychologists.
for sure. Yeah.
But if they can really show a path that you can walk in and achieve something, then there is some. If they empower you, if they give you agency, if they show you how to create your own agency. But if they're just looking for dependence and dependency,
okay, so last question, and then we have to close this podcast. Do you think in the current day, spirituality remains to be, much like in the ancient time, India's greatest export?
it's a good question. I think yes. I think still India has a lot what to teach the world. I think India can change if today there is this new word, applied spirituality. I love
Yes,
it. Only
I have a book on that.
No, only academics can create such a weird combination.
I have a book on that. I was reading that.
Apparently, if you're calling something applied spirituality, then you're assuming that there is spirituality at some point which was not applied. I have no idea what it means. But if we can truly, even India, if it can truly apply all this wisdom into economics, into the social world, into things, India can bring something new to the world, not only as a new age commercial product, but truly as an alternative to what the West has offered so far. I think we are entering a new age in which not the West, but India and the East and the South will have something much more interesting to show, new paths to open. And I really
do
hope
agree
so.
with you that spirituality should be included in our economics and financial sustainability, considering the wealth that most of these institutions have. They should also be audited and taxed. Like we are being taxed, maybe a GST, on spirituality should be there, which would maybe help reduce the burden on us.
Annika, don't get our podcast cancelled, okay? Don't.
No.
Don't
No,
go
but
start
all said
like-
and done, I do agree with you that India has always held the mantle for spiritual intelligence, and it has been our greatest export back in the ancient period. I mean, if you look at all of Asia, most of the traditional systems that continue to exist all the way to Japan emerged in India. And some of the most ancient religions that existed in most places have gone to extinction, but still continue to exist in India. So that is something very, very fantastic. But all said and done, popular religion, ancient religion still remains to be a topic of great curiosity and discussion for the rest of the world, right?
Definitely.
And on that note, I
Thank you
think
so
we
much
shall
for
end.
joining
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.